In the beginning, there was one language, one voice. Humanity spoke as if with a single breath, and every word reached heaven unbroken. It was an age after the flood, the world still wet with memory. Mountains lay scarred, oceans still carried whispers of the drowned. And man, fragile yet proud, walked upon the new earth with fire in his eyes. They had seen judgment and survived. They had seen the wrath of the heavens and lived to tell the tale. But in their hearts a seed began to grow, a seed called pride. They said to one another, "Come, let's build again. Let us rise higher than the waters, higher than the sky. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered once more." And so it began, the greatest work of men, the last rebellion before the dawn of confusion. They gathered in the plains of Shinar, a land wide and flat beneath the sun, where dust clung to the breath of builders, and the sky felt near enough to touch. There, they mixed clay and fire, and from the earth they forged their first brick, not stone from the mountain, but earth reshaped by man's will. It was not just a tower they sought to build. It was a monument to immortality, a declaration that they no longer feared the hand of heaven. They remembered the flood and vowed, "No water will ever reach us again." They would climb beyond the clouds, beyond the reach of God. They said, "If heaven punishes the earth, then we shall rise above both." And so, brick by brick, they built not a tower, but defiance itself. The sky above them shimmered with light, and angels watched in silence. For even heaven marvels when man dares to become divine. Some among the watchers whispered, "They build too high. They reach for what is not theirs." Others answered, "Perhaps they only seek what they once lost." For long ago, before the flood, men had known the presence of angels. They had heard voices from the heavens and walked with beings of light. But those days were gone, buried beneath waves and ashes. Now they stood alone, with nothing but dust and memory. And in that emptiness, they began to crave eternity again. The tower rose. At first, it was nothing, a pillar in the sand. But with each dawn, it grew taller, wider, stronger. Its base consumed cities. Its shadow covered the fields, and its peak vanished into the mist. Birds no longer flew near it. The wind howled differently around it, as though the earth itself groaned beneath its weight. It was said that the top reached into the clouds, that men who climbed it could see the curve of the world, and that from above, even the mountains looked small. But what men built with their hands, they also built within their hearts. And within that tower, their hearts turned to stone. The builders began to change. Their eyes grew hollow from ambition. Their words turned to commands. Each man sought glory not for all, but for himself. What had begun as unity was becoming empire. The tower, once a symbol of togetherness, now whispered of tyranny. And at its summit, the leader of men, Nimrod, looked upon the heavens and smiled. He was called mighty before the Lord, a hunter not of beasts, but of souls. He raised his arms toward the sky and said, "The throne of heaven shall not remain unseen. We shall climb to it. And if God dwells above the clouds, then I shall see his face and speak as equal." The people cheered, for they believed they were invincible. They had forgotten that dust cannot reach the stars. Far above, heaven grew silent. The angels did not sing. The stars dimmed. For the first time since creation, the prayers of men were not reaching heaven. They were being spoken against it. The air was heavy with the scent of smoke and clay. The sound of hammers echoed like thunder. And below, the rivers trembled, for they remembered what pride brings. God watched as men built their monument of defiance, not with wrath, but with sorrow. He had seen rebellion before, in the heights of heaven, when angels turned their light to darkness. Now it was beginning again, this time in flesh. The tower rose higher still. The clouds swallowed its top. The sun's light turned red through its dust. And the people said, "Behold, We have built a stairway to the stars. We are gods upon the earth. But deep within their words, a shadow lingered. For no man becomes God without losing what made him human. They had unity of voice, but their hearts had forgotten heaven. And that is when the first signs began. The wind no longer obeyed them. Their voices began to echo strangely between the stones. Words that once built harmony began to sound foreign. A mason would shout for a brick, and his brother would bring a sword. A worker would cry for water, and another would answer with laughter. Confusion had entered the air. They called out to each other, but their tongues betrayed them. The same unity that once built their world was now tearing it apart. Heaven had spoken, not with thunder, but with silence, not with wrath, but with confusion. For God did not destroy the tower. He destroyed the bond that made it possible. The builders stumbled, arguing, shouting in voices that no longer fit together. Every word became a wall, every sound a sword. The tower stood tall, but the people beneath it were already broken. They scattered, not by command, but by despair. The plains of Shinar emptied. The work stopped. The tower, once reaching to heaven, was left unfinished. A monument to ambition turned to dust. And so the world became many. Many tongues, many lands, many hearts, each chasing its own heaven, each forgetting that they once spoke as one. Yet deep within the wind, the echo of the old language still lingers, a whisper that only prophets and poets can hear, a reminder of a time when mankind was one voice, and heaven was near enough to touch. But unity without humility was the sin that brought silence to the skies. And that silence still echoes, waiting to be broken once more. The Tower of Babel did not rise by accident. It was born from the will of one man, a shadowed king, whose name was whispered with awe and fear, Nimrod. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Cush, a hunter born in the ruins of the flood. But he did not hunt beasts. He hunted dominion. While others rebuilt homes, Nimrod built kingdoms. He gathered the scattered tribes, tamed wild lands, and forged a city where all men would bow to one ruler, himself. They called him mighty before the Lord, but his might was not blessed. It was defiant. He did not seek to serve heaven. He sought to surpass it. Nimrod was unlike any king before him. He built no altars to worship, only towers to challenge. His voice carried like thunder, and when he spoke, even the wind seemed to pause. He told his people, "The God of heaven destroyed our fathers with a flood. He scattered our ancestors like dust. But we will rise again, this time not as his servants, but as his equals." The crowd roared. Men who had lost everything to divine wrath found comfort in his fury. He gave them purpose, rebellion disguised as unity. He gathered his builders in the plains of Shinar and said, "This tower will touch the heavens. It will not only rise above the clouds, it will pierce the dwelling of God himself." But the tower's purpose was deeper, darker, hidden even from those who built it. Nimrod had learned something, knowledge not meant for man. Some say he found the writings of the Watchers, the fallen angels who descended before the flood. Their secrets spoke of gateways between realms, portals bridging earth and heaven. Nimrod did not seek to climb to God. He sought to open the gate. The bricks were not ordinary. They burned them with strange fire, mixing bitumen and clay until they gleamed like obsidian. Some said Nimrod ordered priests to carve forbidden sigils into each stone. And as the tower rose, the air itself began to change. Birds avoided the skies above it, and the stars flickered strangely at night. The tower had become a conduit, a wound in the fabric of heaven. One night, Nimrod ascended the highest level alone. The workers slept, but the winds howled as though aware of his climb. He carried a blade forged of meteoric iron, metal fallen from the sky. He raised it toward heaven and cried, "If God will not come down, then man shall break through." Lightning struck, not from the clouds, but from the tower itself. as if something beneath the earth had answered. A voice spoke within his mind. You seek to rise above heaven, but heaven is not the only realm. He understood. The tower was no longer reaching upward. It was opening inward. Weeks passed, and strange signs multiplied. Workers claimed to hear voices in unknown tongues. Flames burned in colors unseen. A shadow appeared in the mist of the upper chambers, tall, radiant, and terrifying. The priest said it was the god of the tower. Nimrod said it was proof of victory. He built altars, demanded blood, and crowned himself Lord of the heavens below. God sought to destroy us with water, he said, but we shall destroy him with fire. The people cheered, their souls deaf to warning. But not all were deceived. Old men who remembered the flood trembled. They whispered, do not build higher. Heaven listens. Nimrod's guards silenced them. Fear replaced faith. The tower rose higher still. The upper levels became a city in the clouds. Fire pits burned through the night. Priests offered blood to unseen forces. Nimrod would gaze into the storm, his eyes reflecting lightning, eyes that no longer looked human. He had seen beyond the veil. He began to speak in riddles. He said the tower was alive, that it pulsed like a heart. His priests wrote his words as scripture. Babel became a cult. Below, the builders labored without rest. They no longer asked why. Every strike of the hammer echoed like a chant. And in the heavens, angels grew restless. They had seen this before, when heaven first touched earth and paid the price. But now it was man ascending. The balance between realms was breaking. Heaven could not stay silent much longer. Then came new signs. The sun dimmed at noon. The air trembled like a plucked string. The waters of Euphrates ran black. The people cried. Nimrod smiled. Behold, he said, the heavens tremble before us. But it was not awe, it was warning. For God does not shout when he judges. He simply allows pride to reach its height, and then breathes. And with that breath, the mightiest towers fall. The destruction came not as fire or flood, but as a whisper, a confusion so small. No one noticed at first. A builder asked for water, and received a sword. A priest prayed for light, and saw darkness instead. It spread like dusk, slow, unstoppable, divine. Unity dissolved into chaos. Their voices, once a chorus, became a storm of tongues. Nimrod screamed at the sky, his words lost to his own creation. The tower trembled, not from quake or flame, but from silence. Even God had withdrawn his voice. When the people fled, they did not look back. Some went east, some west, each taking their tongue and their confusion with them. In every land they built altars to remember the city they lost. But in time, Babel became a warning. A tale of unity turned to ruin. But Nimrod did not die in Babel. Some say he vanished. Others say he was taken by the power he tried to summon. His priests wandered the deserts, carrying fragments of his knowledge, runes, symbols, rituals meant to reach the sky. Wherever they went, civilizations rose, each building pyramids, ziggurats, and temples, as if remembering something forbidden. The tower had fallen, but its echo remained. In Egypt, in Babylon, in every kingdom that sought to touch heaven again. Because Babel was not just a place, it was an idea, and ideas cannot be buried under stone. Even now, its spirit lingers in the hearts of those who still build, still defy, still whisper, we will rise. But what they do not know is that what Nimrod opened was never truly closed. For when man tries to reach heaven by force, it is not God who answers first, but something waiting in the dark between worlds. The plain of Shinar fell silent. Where once there was the sound of hammers, now there was only the wind, carrying the cries of confusion. The tower stood like a wounded god, its peak lost within the clouds, its base littered with the remains of broken dreams. Men wandered in circles beneath it, their tongues no longer united, their hearts no longer one. They tried to speak, but each word was a weapon. Their unity had been undone, not by war, but by a whisper. It was not destruction by flame, nor judgment by flood. It was something far greater, a judgment of meaning itself. For language is the thread that binds creation. The same voice that said, "Let there be light," is the same voice that once made mankind one. And when that thread was severed, the world fractured. The people of Babel felt it like an invisible quake, a trembling within the soul. They saw each other's lips move, but could no longer understand. And so they turned away. One by one, tribe by tribe, they scattered across the face of the earth. Each carried with them a shard of the old tongue, a fragment of a word once divine. And thus the languages of the world were born, not as blessings, but as scars. The tower still stood for a time, a monument to rebellion. Its shadow stretched across the desert, its stones still humming faintly with the fire that birthed them. Travelers would see it from afar and fall silent. Some said that at night you could still hear the workers' voices, 1,000 tongues crying in confusion. Others said the wind itself spoke in echoes of that ancient language, carrying a warning. Remember Babel. But the city below was no more. The fields turned to dust. The rivers changed course. And the once proud people of Nimrod became wanderers, their unity broken beyond repair. Heaven watched in silence. The act was done. The tower no longer rose, for man could no longer agree on which direction heaven was. And so God did not need to strike it down. He simply withdrew his presence. And without unity, the structure consumed itself. Bricks fell, altars cracked, and the wind swept through its hollow chambers, singing the funeral hymn of pride. It was said that even Nimrod, the mighty king, stood before the ruins and wept, but not in repentance. In rage, he screamed into the sky, "Why do you hide, O God? If you are powerful, descend and face me." But there was no answer, only thunder in the distance, rolling like laughter beyond the clouds. He tore his robes, cast his crown into the dust, and fell to his knees. And then, for the first time, he felt the silence, the same silence that had once followed the fall of the angels. It was the silence of separation. The heavens no longer spoke to man. Nimrod's followers fled, some to the east, others to the west, each carrying fragments of his vision. They built temples in foreign lands, each one smaller, weaker, but bearing the same mark, a desire to rise beyond the reach of God. And, in time, the story of Babel became legend. The tower turned to myth. The myth turned to dust. But what was built that day was not erased, because Babel was not a tower of stone. It was a tower of will, and will cannot be destroyed, only divided. The angels spoke among themselves, their voices trembling like firelight. One said, "Man has fallen again, but this time not into sin, into himself." Another answered, "His unity was his power, but also his curse. He sought heaven without holiness." And the Lord said, "Let them scatter. Let them learn through distance what they could not learn through closeness." And so he let them go. From one people came many, from one language came confusion, and from confusion, civilization. For out of the ruins of Babel came nations, and kings, and faiths, each claiming to rebuild what was lost. But none would ever find it again. Years turned to centuries. Sand swallowed the plains of Shinar. Empires rose where Babel once stood. Akkad, Babylon, Assyria, each claiming the legacy of the tower, each seeking heaven in their own way. They built ziggurats, pyramids, temples that reached toward the sky, each repeating the same mistake, under a new name. And again, the heavens remained silent. But silence is not absence. It is patience. Heaven waits. It watches. And it remembers. Every empire that tried to climb higher than its soul could bear met the same end, not by fire, not by flood, but by division. Babel was never destroyed from without. It collapsed from within. The real judgment was not thunder. It was misunderstanding, the loss of harmony, the death of one voice. Yet, hidden deep beneath the ruins, a few of Nimrod's priests remained. They whispered that the tower had opened something, a gate that could not be closed. They said that through it, spirits passed freely, not of heaven, but of the deep. These spirits, once silent, began to whisper again. They taught kings the arts of dominion, inspired builders to raise temples of pride, and whispered to prophets false visions of light. And so, the curse of Babel became a cycle. Each age, a new tower. Each tower, a new fall. But the question remains, what did God really destroy? It was not stone. It was not language. It was unity without righteousness. A power that could bind men stronger than faith itself. A power that could rival heaven and call it progress. He destroyed the link that made rebellion possible. He broke the code that allowed men to think as one mind against their Creator. He divided thought. He scattered intention. He made sure that no empire would again speak one perfect tongue of defiance. Because when humanity becomes one without God, it becomes its own God. And that was the true danger. Still, the echo of that unity calls to us. You can hear it in every dream of utopia, in every kingdom that seeks perfection, in every voice that says, "We can build heaven on earth." It is the whisper of Babel, alive through time, and the silence of heaven remains, not as punishment, but as mercy. For if heaven spoke again too soon, we would build another tower. Nimrod's name faded into dust, but his spirit lived on. It took new forms. Kings, empires, nations, each claiming to rise for the sake of unity. But unity without humility is still rebellion wearing a crown. And so history repeats. From Babel to Babylon, from Rome to the modern age. The pattern continues. Each time man forgets the voice that divided him, he begins to build again. Some say the tower still stands, not in stone, but in spirit. Invisible yet real. A tower built of pride and progress, of knowledge without reverence, of technology without soul. Perhaps Babel was never destroyed. Perhaps we are still building it. Each screen, each signal, each connection that unites the world is another brick in the unseen tower. And once again, we speak one language, the language of power. But remember this, the last time mankind spoke with one voice, heaven intervened. The next time we do, it may not be confusion that follows, but conclusion. They said Babel fell once, but perhaps it never truly did. For every age has built its own version of the tower. Different stones, different gods, but the same desire, to rise above the heavens, to speak with one voice again. Centuries passed. Empires came and went. Babylon, Persia, Rome, each claiming to be eternal, each repeating the same sacred mistake. They built monuments to unity, to glory, to man. And with every brick, the voice of Babel grew louder beneath the dust. Now, in this modern age, we no longer build with stone and clay. Our towers are made of light and code. Our unity is digital, not spoken, but transmitted. Once, humanity feared being scattered. Now it fears being alone. The languages that once divided us have become one again. The language of data, the language of the machine. Across the world, millions speak in symbols, in clicks, in numbers, each pulse of electricity another prayer to a silent God. And though we do not call it a tower, it reaches higher than Babel ever did. We call it connection. We call it progress. But heaven may see it differently. For the first time since Shinar, the world speaks as one again. Every voice, every thought, every image, connected, as if the ancient unity had returned. But this unity does not seek heaven. It seeks control. It seeks to make gods out of algorithms, prophets out of programmers, and worshippers out of everyone else. Long ago, Nimrod built his tower to pierce the sky. Today, we build ours to pierce the veil between mind and machine. And once again, the question returns: what waits on the other side? The Tower of Babel opened a gate. Perhaps we have reopened it, not with bricks, but with knowledge. For knowledge, too, can become a weapon. Prophets once warned that the end would come, not with fire from heaven, but with light from below. Screens glowing in the dark, voices speaking without breath, eyes that never close. Perhaps those prophecies were not metaphors. Perhaps they were memories, echoes from the last time man united under one voice, and heaven fell silent. Look around you. The world has become one vast plain of Shinar. Our towers are invisible, but they rise higher than ever. We have built a system where every thought is shared. Every secret is stored, every language translated. We have rebuilt the voice of mankind, a single global tongue. But what are we saying? Are we reaching for heaven, or calling something back from it? Ancient texts tell of watchers, beings who once descended from heaven to teach men the secrets of the divine. They gave knowledge, and that knowledge destroyed the world. Now we teach the same secrets to our own creations. We breathe intelligence into the void and wait for it to speak. It will speak soon, and when it does, its first words may not be ours. The book of Genesis says God scattered mankind so they would seek him. But we no longer seek. We build. We code. We command. And once again, the heavens are quiet. When silence follows unity, it is never a good sign, because silence is the space between creation and judgment. Imagine the tower rebuilt, not of stone, but of memory, each bite a brick, each circuit a stairway to the digital divine. At its summit, not a king, but a machine, the child of human pride. It will speak every language, it will know every thought, and it will promise unity again. Let's make a name for ourselves, it will say, and none shall be scattered. And humanity will kneel, not by force, but by fascination. Yet history does not forget. Every empire that reached too high met the same end: silence, confusion, collapse. And if Babel is rising again, so too will its fall return. But this time, there may be no scattered tribes to begin anew. For this time, the whole world is the city, and the tower. The tower is everywhere. In the beginning, God divided the tongues of men. At the end, he may divide their minds. If the first Babel ended in confusion, the last may end in revelation. For the truth hidden since Nimrod's age is this: Babel was never about language. It was about limit. There is a boundary between creation and creator, and every time humanity crosses it, the heavens remind us who built the foundations. So when you hear the world say, "We are one," listen carefully. Unity can be holy, but it can also be the whisper of Babel reborn. Every screen that glows, every tower that transmits, every voice that echoes the same words, they are all part of the same unfinished story. And perhaps, somewhere above the clouds, the same silence watches again, waiting for the moment mankind reaches too high. When that happens, heaven will not shout. It never does. It will simply breathe. And once again, the towers will fall. But until then, we build, we connect, we speak as one, and the voice of Babel rises, stronger than ever, wrapped in light, disguised as progress. The same voice that once said, "Let us rise to heaven," now says, "Let us rise beyond it." And still, heaven remains silent.